All right, welcome back everyone to Life Through the Eyes of X, where we explore personal growth, mindset, and just your lifestyle in general. Sweet, this is episode 2. Today's episode, we're going to be diving into something that affects us all most of the time without us realizing it. Our saboteurs and our inner critic. These are the voices in our head that can hold us back, that can create self-doubt, and keeping us from reaching our full potential. So let's explore how we can recognize these saboteurs and start taking back control of our minds and our lives. So what exactly are saboteurs? So simply put, they're the negative voices in our head that undermine our confidence and sabotage our efforts. They can manifest in various ways like self-doubt, fear, and harsh self-criticism. Think of them as your internal critics, always ready to point out what's wrong, even when there's a lot right. The inner critic in particular is the loudest saboteur. It's the one that constantly critiques our actions, our thoughts, our abilities, and let's be honest, we've all experienced this. It's that voice that says you're not good enough and you're going to mess up. We don't want that. So let's dive into the characteristics of these saboteurs. So a lot of these saboteurs often sound fearful, pessimistic, perfectionistic, all these kind of negative things. So I'm going to dive into some common characteristics of these saboteurs and we'll go from there. The judge. All right. So the judge is always looking for flaws in yourself and looking for flaws in others. So do you ever see yourself like looking for your flaws? Do you ever see yourself like looking in flaws in other people? The judge often leads to a lot of feelings like envy and jealousy and just really brings those flaws to the surface. But you don't need that, right? We're all in this life together. Nobody's perfect. And this judge is consistently trying to bring you down by bringing up all these negative thoughts, all these judgments about other people, about yourself, and just, it's good to acknowledge it. And, if you see yourself doing it, take a second and you're like, oh, wow, like that's the judge in me. That's the saboteur that's coming out, talking about or bringing up these judgments about yourself or other people. Next, we got the controller. The controller is an interesting one. The controller needs to control situations. They need to control people. And often the controller is sparked or comes from a place of fearing chaos, right? They don't want anything not to go the way that is planned. So they feel the need that they have to control a situation, a person, and just overall can lead to a lot of things, like if you're trying to control something and it doesn't go your way, you're going to be let down even more if it doesn't go the way that you planned it to, because you're trying to control that situation. You're trying to control the outcome, especially when it comes to people. People are going to act how they're going to act. People are going to be who they're going to be, and trying to control that person in a way that kind of like brings them into like your little box is not going to set you up for anything good when they eventually do pop out of that box and just like be themselves. So that's the controller. The stickler. The stickler is a perfectionism-driven saboteur. Basically, never satisfied until things are perfect. I'm sure you know someone or yourself are this person. Yeah, just based around perfectionism, I'm sure we've all experienced it. I'm sure we all know somebody who is a perfectionist. This often leads to never meeting your expectations of your ridiculously high, perfect standards. All right. So one thing like that I've learned, I've been on like a very interesting journey this year of growing mentally and physically. And, it comes down to like everything I eat. And I used to be like an all or nothing mindset, right? That perfectionist mindset. And the second that I broke that all or nothing mindset, boom, everything came crashing down. So having a good relationship with yourself and being nice to yourself is so important to avoid the saboteur. And to, really address the saboteur, you need to take some time, sit down, and like, what's a good way that I can, deal with this? Because I'm not going to be perfect. I'm not going to perform perfect all the time. And things aren't always going to be perfect. What I do, 80% of the time, I'm very strict with my diet. And 20% of the time, like if I'm out with friends and I'm having a social gathering or something, like maybe I'll have a beer or maybe I'll have a burger, right? But like these aren't things that I'm consistently eating every day or drinking every day. It's just I know that I'm on like a lifestyle change, like a diet. And just because I'm on it doesn't mean that it has to take away the joys of me experiencing a burger with friends. So I hope that makes sense, but that's the stickler right there. The pleaser. Oh my goodness. This was me for a long time. I still deal with this one a lot. So this one comes from a lot of different things. You know, psychologically, it can stem from your childhood, how you were raised, and mostly just validation. Basically what the pleaser is puts others' needs ahead of themselves to gain validation, to gain approval, basically. So this one I struggled with for a long time, often putting everyone's needs ahead of mine. And the reason why this is a saboteur, or why it actually isn't the best thing, is because when you're putting everyone's needs ahead of your own, you're going to come crumpling down when you're not able to take care of everyone else's needs, right? You can do it for like a certain amount of time, and you're sometimes able to pull it off where you make everyone happy and then yourself happy afterwards. But when you're wasting all your energy, all your time into making everyone else around you so happy and making sure that their needs are met, you're not leaving room for yourself. You know, it's like, in this situation, I'm a big advocate for, I guess you would say, being selfish. And it's not being selfish, it's taking care of yourself. A good way that you're able to like help people is to help yourself first. And once you're able to help yourself and you're good and solidified with yourself, then you can help the people around you, your friends, your family, your partner, you know. And once you have that under control and you're able to help them, and you still like got more energy in the tank and you're killing it in all those aspects, then you can reach out and start helping the community, you know, like go to like a soup kitchen, help your community out, volunteer at like the Salvation Army. Like there's these things that you're able to do because of the foundation of helping yourself first that you've built previously. So just think about it in the long run. Like, you need to take care of yourself first if you're going to take care of the people around you and the community around you and so on. You know, it's not gonna benefit anyone in the long run if you keep trying to help everyone else and just crumbling down yourself. You know, you're just gonna crash, and then you're gonna go like MIA for a couple days or weeks or whatever, or you're just gonna, you know, you're gonna burn out, and that's not fair to yourself. That's not fair to the people around you. And you know, if you're putting yourself first, people get it. You know, like they understand, and if they don't, then they also should listen to this podcast. But yeah, that's the pleaser right there. Next up is the hyperachiever. So the hyperachiever measures their self-worth by their achievements. And this is kind of like a toxic relationship with yourself. If you're measuring your self-worth on what you've achieved, how the heck are you supposed to thrive? You know, like, what if I'm just starting out? How the heck am I supposed to come into a goal or a job or a mission when I don't have achievements to back it up, right? I'm always going to feel like I've let myself down because I haven't achieved anything. And, you know, this is like, it's good for drive, and it's not like necessarily a bad like trait, I would say. However, when it is a main saboteur in your head, just like coming at you and consistently putting these negative thoughts in your head because you haven't achieved so much, that's not good, right? You need to make sure that you have this balance where you can give love to yourself as well as acknowledge, like, I want to achieve more, you know, reach to achieve more, but don't hold your self-worth and like who you've become to a standard that's judged off of what you've achieved so far. So the next up is the victim. And I'm sure we've all had these thoughts, and I know people who have, I have myself, but the victim is someone who focuses on pain and someone who focuses on helplessness. So whenever they're in a situation where, you know, that's stressful or challenging, they play, you hear it often, people say, play the victim, right? And it's not going to get you anywhere. You're just going to feel bad for yourself. You might end up making other people feel bad for you, but you're not getting anywhere. And it's like, you may end up getting what you want, but how you got there is not a healthy way to get there. You know, like playing the victim in situations rather than acknowledging what happened, processing it, and coming to a conclusion is not going to be good for anyone, right? If you're so set on being the victim, you're not going to hear what anyone else has to say about the situation or their perspective because you're so focused on being so helpless. So the victim, if you're in this mindset, be mindful, take a step back, say pause, and then realize what's actually going on. Why do I feel like I am the victim? And kind of express like, oh, I feel this way. I think you get what I'm saying here. But that's the victim. This one is something that I've worked on a lot over the last year. I think a lot of people struggle with this. People often will categorize themselves as having avoidant behavior and kind of justify it as that. But yeah, this one is the avoider. The avoider avoids conflict, discomfort, and just seeks ease. All right. They don't want to deal with any hard conversations. They don't want to deal with any stress. They just want ease. And it's so important for your character and who you are and your internal ego to have these hard conversations, to put yourself in uncomfortable situations. How the heck do you think people grow as people? How do you think that your best friend Bob landed the star cheerleader? It's just like he put himself in an uncomfortable situation where he was nervous and he was, shaking and sweating, but he still put himself in that situation to have that uncomfortable conversation where he put himself out of his comfort zone to talk to her. And that might not be the best example, but like, let's say like your best friend, John, right? How the heck did he get to where he's at? Because he's so successful and he's killing it and he has an awesome family and husband or wife, who knows? Anyways, what I'm trying to say here is like he put himself in these uncomfortable positions and put himself in hard conversations with maybe his boss, maybe with his partner. And from this created growth for him, for his family, for his business. All of these hard, uncomfortable situations are what grew him and his foundation. If he avoided all these, he wouldn't be anywhere close to where he's at. So good on you, John. Keep it up. But recognizing these types can help you identify what your self-saboteurs are. And that's the first step to overcoming them. So now, why is it so important to understand and recognize our self-saboteurs? Well, because they can have a pretty profound impact on the rest of our lives. They can decrease our confidence. They can cause procrastination, increase stress and anxiety, and even make us miss out on opportunities. For instance, if you're consistently hearing the voice of the judge, you might avoid taking risks because you fear criticism. Or if the pleaser is loud in your mind, you might struggle with setting boundaries with people, which in the end will leave you overwhelmed. So how do we start recognizing these voices? Well, it begins with self-awareness. So pay attention to moments where you feel anxious, insecure, or overly critical. A great exercise for this is, again, I love this, I preach it, but just to journal. Write down the emotions that you felt from certain situations and jot down like what thoughts came up because of this. You can also, there's also a lot of free assessments that you can take to identify your saboteurs. And that is a great place to start because you can realize which ones are affecting you the most, and you can take those ones head on because there's going to be resources that can help you address them, acknowledge them, and overcome them. And it is so important to remember that these voices, these saboteurs, are not your true self. They are not you. They're just basically a part of your mind's defense mechanism. As Eckhart Tolle wisely said, to realize that you are not your thoughts is when you begin to awaken spiritually. So with that being said, let's talk about how to overcome these saboteurs and your inner critic. Here are some steps you can take. First off, acknowledge them. Just straight up take them head on. Just understand that they are there and don't have any judgment towards them. Acknowledge them. They are there. You have them. That is, first off, a huge step, but a very important one. Second off, disassociate from them. All right. It is so important to remember that these thoughts, these saboteurs, are not your true self. They are not who you are or who you want to be. Third off is to reframe. All right. So try to challenge these negative messages with more positive ones, more constructive ones that are positive and amplifying towards who you want to be and who you are. Number 4, practice self-compassion. It sounds so simple, but it's everyone has these thoughts. Everyone is a critique of themselves. It's part of being human. Everyone's going to go through it. So be kind to yourself. Be patient with yourself. You know, just be compassionate. I was listening to the Rich Roll podcast, and he had a guest on, and the guest was talking about how his therapist, after she realized how bad his saboteurs were, gave him an exercise where whenever he got mad at himself or annoyed at himself, because he was a really big critique of himself. He was a perfectionist. He had a lot of these different saboteurs coming in and trying to sabotage him. And he was so harsh on himself. He was a perfectionist. He was so judgmental and would just say some really vile stuff to himself. And his therapist made him record these messages on a voice memo and talk to himself like he would have talked to his friends or his family. And there's no way that he would have said what he said to his friends or family that he was saying to himself. And, you know, after the first time, he just broke down in tears. He realized like how mean he was being. And it was like 4 months of like 3 or 4 of these messages to his therapist every day. And his therapist made sure that every time he recorded one of these, that he would send it to her. So yeah, she was getting 3 or 4 of these every single day for 4 months straight until there was that shift. And he was starting to be kind to himself. So if this is something you deal with, that's a great exercise. I'm not saying send those messages to me, but just when you're getting angry with yourself, take a step back, start recording, and try to talk to yourself like you would talk to a colleague or a friend or a family member, because you would never say the stuff that you're saying to yourself to them. So number 5 is mindfulness and meditation. These practices can help you observe your thoughts without getting attached to them, right? So let your thoughts flow through, acknowledge them, understand where they're coming from, and let them go. So a super practical exercise is to name your saboteur. So give it a name and visualize it as a separate entity. So basically, in essence, what this can do is make it easier to address it as well as diminish its power. So understanding and managing our self-saboteurs is definitely a journey, but it is so crucial to personal growth. So by recognizing these negative voices and learning how to quiet them will lead us to a more fulfilling and authentic life. So take some time, reflect on your own saboteurs, practice the exercises we've discussed, and remember, progress is the goal, not perfection. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining me. I hope you found this conversation insightful and thought-provoking. If you did, make sure to drop a comment, leave a like. This is Life Through the Eyes of X. Open your eyes to the life that's next. Peace.